So in this movie, Lena Headey plays Karen Gillan's mother, and in real life, Lena Headey is British and Karen Gillan is Scottish. But in this movie, Lena Headey does have her British accent, but Karen Gillan has an American accent. What's that all about? Gunpowder Milkshake. That is such a weird title for a movie. So this is a new movie on Netflix. I saw the trailer for it and I was like, alright, it looks like a fun romp. I'll check it out. It stars Karen Gillan. She plays a hit woman. She's part of a gang or a mob or something called The Firm. But then on a mission, she decides to save some little kid who was not supposed to be saved or something. But she starts getting attached to this little girl. So now she has to protect her against a whole bunch of bad guys who are coming after her. And now we have our movie, which you would swear is directed by Zack Snyder, but it's not. I really mean that. This movie, there are so many things I was like, Zack Snyder would be doing the exact same thing if he were in the director's chair. There's a lot of unnecessary slow-mo in this movie. It's really stylistic, and it's also incoherent. The only thing Zack Snyder would do differently is that he would suck all the color out of this movie, because the colors in this movie are really vibrant, like in a Dick Tracy kind of way. I mean, Karen Gillan is really good. She's a really good actress. I haven't seen her in too many things outside of the MCU. I know she was in Doctor Who, though. But in this movie, it's funny, because she's speaking in her American accent, and a couple times I was like, oh yeah, there's Nebula. You can totally hear it in her voice. But she is good, and when she throws down, it's really cool. And this movie does have a pretty legit cast. Paul Giamatti plays the head of the firm, and I feel like Paul Giamatti only ever does small roles these days. When was the last time he did something really major? I don't remember, but he was fine. The kid in this movie, I wish she was better. She was also fine. She wasn't great, but she wasn't terrible. Although I do feel like this kid would be more in shock after the events that transpire in this movie. Like by the end of this movie, this kid has seen some shit, and she doesn't really seem fazed by it at all. That's kind of weird. But one of the biggest compliments I can give this movie is that it's really self-aware. It knows what it is, which is just a romp. That's all it is, really. It's not here to be Amadeus. It's here to show off violence and guns and blood. It's a rated R movie, so there's gonna be plenty of that. And like I said, I did notice a lot of Zack Snyder-ish qualities about this movie. Mainly, it reminded me a lot of Sucker Punch, which is funny because Carla Gugino was in that, and she's also in this. But this is a very girl power movie with a story that doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it feels like it's more about the spectacle than anything else. Which I will say, the action in this movie was pretty well choreographed and really well framed. Sure, there was some shaky cam, but not enough to bother me. But I mean, one of the action scenes that really stands out in my mind from this movie is one where it's just like a steady shot, the camera's going, it's not shaking at all. It's just tracking the action, and people are throwing down, and I was like, this is how you do it. Wow, I can actually see what's going on. That's cool. So I will give all sorts of props to the choreographers and cinematographers of this movie. It really seemed like they knew what they were doing. Although there were some points where I was like, that is the fakest looking blood I've ever seen. It was like obviously red paint. When someone got stabbed and then the blood came out, I was like, no. I mean, granted, I've never seen someone get stabbed in real life, so I guess I wouldn't really know what it looks like. But I'm just saying, I've never seen it look like this in any other movie. It just looked like paint, which would lead me to the rest of my bummers about this film. Cause yeah, I did have some fun with it, but is it a good movie? No, it's not. Like I said, this movie is incoherent, it doesn't really flow, but mostly the story in this movie just plain doesn't make sense, and it comes off as stupid as fuck quite a few times. The editing in the first half of the movie is really choppy, and I get that the movie's trying to be stylistic in that Zack Snyder Sucker Punch-ish kind of way, and honestly, I remember really liking that movie Sucker Punch. I haven't watched it in years, so I don't know if I would like it as much if I watched it now. I do want to, though. But if this movie was trying to go for, cool, stylistic Zack Snyder-ish, it didn't really hit it. Then again, Zack Snyder doesn't always hit it either. I hate to keep comparing this to Zack Snyder movies, but I just can't help it because, again, I would swear Zack Snyder directed this. If someone were to tell me that Zack Snyder directed this before I actually looked up who directed this, I would believe them. But in the first half of the movie, a lot of the scenes, it just goes from scene to scene, and it feels like the scenes have nothing to do with each other. Oh, here's one scene with some characters, then here's another scene with some other characters. I get that it's setting it up, but they didn't feel connected. Also, the dialogue in this movie sucks. I mean, this is the kind of dialogue that is super cheesy and you don't buy at all. And again, the movie knows what it is. It's self-aware of the fact that it's cheesy. It's a cheesy action flick on Netflix. That's what it is, and that's what it knows it is. But if that's what it's going for, that doesn't really make it a better movie than it's setting out to be. You know what I mean? If the movie was going for a cheesy action flick, guess what? That's what it is. The dialogue is not good at all, and there are a lot of cliches in the plot of this movie too. Within the first 15 minutes, I was like, yeah, okay, this is pretty cliche. I've seen this before. And that feeling never goes away throughout the entire rest of the movie. If this movie was aiming to be a cheesy action flick, then the least it could do was throw some originality in there. But no, not here. I mean, there are a lot of illogical things in this movie, including but not limited to the fact that people sure do last a long time in this movie after getting shot, or stabbed in the heart, or whatever. Like, there's a character who gets shot, this person lasts quite a while. We're talking like 5-10 minutes or something, and they still keep fighting. I was like, alright, going out like Boromir, I guess. Except not nearly as impactful as Boromir's death. Because really, I didn't give a shit about this character, or any of the other characters for that matter. So yeah, it's illogic like that that's sprinkled throughout this movie. Lastly, it takes forever for this movie to wrap up. After what feels like the final throwdown, you know, the climactic fight in this movie, I swear to God, it felt like there was another half an hour or at least 20 minutes left. The movie ends like 3 or 4 times. After the first time, I was like, alright, it's over. Oh, nope, there's more? Okay. And then the second time, I was like, alright, now it's up. No, there's more? And then when it finally does end, I was like, oh my God. Like, this whole epilogue, if that's what I'm gonna call it, it felt unnecessary, really. Because it really did feel like it was dragging the movie on for longer than it needed to. I wasn't ever really bored by this movie. I was entertained, but not in the best way. I'll put it like that. Because this isn't a boring movie. There's a difference in bad movies between boring and cheesy. Learn that. Although I will say the score in this movie, it was actually quite good. I've never heard of the person who composed it, but as the movie was starting out, like during the opening logos, I was like, this music is surprisingly good. And then like during the action scenes and during the entire movie, I was like, nah, this music is better than the movie itself. It fit the vibe very well. If for nothing else, the score was like the best part of the movie, which sounds weird for me to say, doesn't it? So in the end, Gunpowder Milkshake was nah. I honestly don't know what I was expecting going into this, because I'd only watched the trailer like a couple times. But after it was done, I was like, oh, there's a spiritual sequel to Sucker Punch. Now we have it, because that is seriously what it felt like to me. I cannot stress that enough, except this movie wasn't as good as Sucker Punch. I know this is a streaming movie. If it were a theatrical release, I would give it the rating, wait until you can stream it online, so that's kind of ironic. I have let you know what the movie is. It's a cheesy, bloody action romp. If that sounds appealing to you, then go ahead, check it out. If it doesn't, then don't waste your time. This movie is super incoherent. The dialogue was really cheesy. The movie's full of illogic, but the action was pretty cool. It's like the highlight. That is, if you can just turn off your brain. And this movie takes forever to wrap up, although the score is pretty good. So there you go. So Gunpowder Milkshake, have you watched it? What do you think about it? And what is your favorite role that Karen Gillan has played? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.